Hi, algebra students, it's Mrs. Thompson. We're back at it. We're going to be studying now section 3.4. We just took a test on 3.1 to 3.3 where we were learning how to do some basic graphs and, we weren't really doing equations, but we were graphing points. Well, now they're going to give us a function, they're going to give us a domain, and we've got to plug the domain in to find out what the range is. Plug in the domain. Remember that domain is x. And then we're going to solve for y. And then we'll know what the points are to graph. So I'm going to take you step by step in example 1, do a couple of examples with you, and then we'll let you try one by yourself for some extra credit. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Make sure my pen is on here, not white, or you will never see it. All right. So here we go. We're right here. This is our equation. This is the function that they've given us. Negative x plus 2y equals 6. And then they gave us the domain negative 4, negative 2, 0, and 2. So step 1, what we want to do is we want to solve for y. That's going to make it a lot easier to substitute in values for x and then solve for y as a result. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come off to the side here and I'm going to rewrite the equation. So I've got negative x plus 2y is equal to 6. And I want to do some basic rearranging. First thing I need to do is I definitely need to address the fact that there actually is a number in front of x. Do you know what it is? I know you see the negative sign, but what number is that? Now, hopefully you are screaming at your screen, that's negative 1, Mrs. Thompson, it's negative 1x. You're exactly right. So what we're going to do, we want to get y by itself. So we want to leave y there. Don't move the y, leave it there. Let's move everything else away from it. So let's start with moving the x. So we have negative 1x. So how do you undo a negative sign, first of all, and you want to physically remove that x term all the way over to the other side. So hopefully you're thinking or saying out loud, I want to add 1x to each side, and you would be correct, okay? So that would cancel out, leaving me with 2y, maybe if it'll let me write, 2y is equal to 6 plus 1x, or you could just write x, if that would make you a little bit happier. Okay, last thing we need to do is we need to divide everything we see by 2. Okay, so now we have y equals 3, because 6 divided by 2 is 3, plus 1/2 x. 1x over 2 is the same thing as taking half of x. Okay, all right, so we've rearranged it. That's going to make it easier for us to plug numbers in. So we're going to make a table, which is what I've started right here, and I put in our domain, negative 4, negative 2, 0, and 2. That was what was given up here in the problem. And now we're going to plug those numbers in and do some basic math. So let's start right here. This is where we're plugging in. It's right there for the x. So first number is negative 4. So we're going to take 1/2 of negative 4, and that's negative 2. And then we're going to add 3 to that. So what's negative 2 plus 3? If you're saying 1, you're right. Good job. Let's do it again. Go back to the same problem. Okay, the rearranged problem, y equals 3 plus 1/2 x. Now we're going to plug in negative 2 for the x. So we're going to take half of negative 2. Well, half of negative 2 is negative 1. Now add 3 to that. What's negative 1 plus 3? Hopefully you're saying 2, Mrs. Thompson. You're probably already done. Most of you are so quick, you're already done. We're going to go back. We're going to plug in 0. 0, half of 0 is still 0. And 0 plus 3 is 3. I think we're seeing a pattern here, aren't we? And then we're going to plug in a 2. Half of 2 is 1. And 1 plus 3 is 4. Okay, so that's what we did. Rearranging for y is always a good idea, especially when it's not already by itself. In step 3, this is your last step. They want you to graph this function. All right, now we do have some negative numbers in there, so we are going to have to do all 4 quadrants, and that's okay. So you've got a little bit of graph paper on your paper there. You don't need any graph paper today. I provided it for you, and we're going to graph point by point. So our first point is based on our table, -4, +1. So we're going to go back to -4 on the X, and then we're going to go up to +1 on the Y and mark it. Okay, now we're going to go to -2, +2. So start at the origin, go back to -2 on the X, and then up to +2 on the Y and mark it. Looks great. All right, we're going to do 0, 3. That means 0 on the X, you're not moving on the X, and you're going to find +3 on the Y and mark it. Looks great. And we got one more. We got 2, 4. So find +2 on the X and then go up to +4 on the Y. 1, 2, 3. I have to kind of invade my work over here. Now because we're doing an equation, they gave us an equation to solve, we are going to end up making this a continuous graph. Now the trick is don't look at your pencil tip. Look at the destination. So you're going to put your pencil tip on that bottom point, -4, -1, and then without, you don't need a straight edge. You can freehand it. Just don't look at your pencil tip. Look at where you want to go and put your line right through it. And it should work for you every time. Okay? And that we will draw a line. We will make these continuous because it's more than just graphing points. We are graphing a line. They happen to give us the domain, but we're graphing a line or a function. Okay? Now let's flip over to the next page. And now you see our function is f of x is equal to the absolute value of x. And they gave us the domain to plug in. So that this is the specific domain. Eventually, in the next chapter, when we start doing linear functions, you'll choose your domain. They're not going to give it to you. You will choose it. But for this chapter, this section, they're going to tell us what to plug in, and we will follow accordingly. All right, so step 1, we want to make a table. I've already started this table. I gave you your domain, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And so what we need to do is y is already by itself. F of x is y. Okay, I know you remember that from our previous lessons. So what we're going to do, since it's already by itself, we're ready to plug right into the equation. We don't need to do rearranging. Y is already by itself. All right, so absolute value of x. So we're going to take the first point, -2, and we're going to do the absolute value of -2. What's the absolute value of -2? I'm sure you're screaming at me going, it's +2. And you would be right. So we're going to put +2 right there beside -2. All right. Now we're going to do the same thing with -1. What's the absolute value of -1? +1. What's the absolute value of 0? 0. What's the absolute value of +1? Still +1. What's the absolute value of 2? +2. Okay, when you take the absolute value of a number, it's always going to end up being positive. The only way you'll get a negative answer if there's a negative sign outside of the absolute value. There's not. So all our answers are going to be positive. Now we're ready to graph. Because we have some negative numbers, I'm going to do all 4 quadrants. Here we go. All right. And let's go ahead and get started. We've got -2, +2. So I'm going to find -2 on the x and then +2 on the y, and I'm going to mark it. I'm doing mine kind of big and bold so you can see it real good. -1 on the x and then +1 on the y. There's that one. 0, 0. That's just the origin, so we'll mark that. And then we're going to do +1 on the x and then +1 on the y. Mark that. That's where it's located. And then we're going to do 2, 2. So +2 on the x and +2 on the y. And there it is. Okay? Now, because this is an actual function, an equation that they give us, we are going to go ahead and put lines through it. So that's what we're going to do. And this is a really special shape. This is called an absolute value function. Okay, and this is very typical shape. You're going to see a hard V. It'll either open up or it could also open down. But there aren't any curves to this thing, and you'll notice that about absolute value. It's always going to be this particular shape, a V shape. So it either opens up or it opens down. So I want you to memorize that. That's going to be really, really important. That you recognize the functions and kind of anticipate what they're going to look like ahead of time. So we've graphed it. Now you know. Absolute value functions always have this very distinct shape, which is a hard V. All right, let's flip to the next page. This is one I want you to try by yourself. This is going to be extra credit. I'm going to give you 2 points if you carry it through to the end. What I'm looking for, you need to solve for y first. You definitely need to do that first. You're going to take this equation, negative 2x plus y equals 3. You do need to rearrange it, get y by itself, then do your table of values. They've provided the domain they'd like you to plug in, and then you need to graph it. So there's 3 things that need to happen here. Rearrange, get your table done, and graph. All right, give it your best shot, see what you can do, and I will check this tomorrow. Thank you very much, and write down any questions. Code word today, let's see, we'll do, what's one I haven't done in a while? Oh my goodness, Duke Blue Devils, that sounds great. Duke Blue Devils, yes, I am a Dookie, and I know some of you really don't like that. Sorry, love you anyway, bye-bye.